What if I told you that you didn't need to do FTP test ever again? And on top of that, you could have a personal coach for just $10 a month. One that would look at your training history, analyze it, and then create a day-by-day training program based on your needs. Well, you can have almost that. It's just not going to be a real person. It's going to be an online platform. And that training platform is called XERT. And if you're wondering what the heck is that, it's basically the exact opposite of your standard training plans that you can buy online or even do on Zwift. Those plans, however, have one big problem before you even join them, regardless of their quality. They're the same for everyone. But we are not all the same. One person rides 50 miles a week, another rides 300 miles a week. How can you recommend the same training plan to both those riders? But it's how it's been done in the past, and oftentimes it's still done in the present. XERT works differently. It looks at your training history, analyzes it, and then creates you a day-by-day training program based on your goals and your needs. In this video, I'm going to give you an introduction to XERT, show you its benefits, and walk you through its most important features. It is fair to say that I have an ambassador account for XERT, but for the past year I have been using XERT extensively for my training, and up until now I have been paying for it with my own money. So what XERT really is? In short, it is a training platform that analyzes your workout history, creates your fitness profile, and then based on that and your goals, builds a training plan for you that is tailored to your needs. The best part about it is its flexibility. Did you miss a day of your training? No problem. XERT will recalculate your training plan. Did you get COVID and missed 2 weeks? XERT will return you back to training safely. What if you cannot train on Mondays and on Fridays you can train only for 30 minutes? Well, it's not going to prescribe you workouts on Mondays, and on Fridays those workouts will be only 30 minutes long. So how does it actually work? Let's first take a look at how XERT analyzes your fitness history. When it's looking at your past training, it actually calculates two things. Your training load, which is basically the volume of training you have done recently, and your fitness signature, which is basically a numerical expression of your abilities. And you are probably quite familiar with both those concepts. Training load is a metric that is being calculated by many platforms like Training Peaks or intervals.icu, and even more platforms are setting your fitness baseline in terms of calculating your FTP. But XERT takes both these concepts into way higher level. When it comes to training load, it is usually calculated as a weighted average of your training stress score for some period of time, usually 42 days. It works well, but it tells you very little about the quality of your training. 10 TSS of easy riding is vastly different and has vastly different adaptations as 10 TSS done at your sprint power. And if you don't believe me, go try it yourself and you will feel that for yourself on your legs. So what XERT does differently, it monitors your training load separately for your intensities below your threshold power, for intensities above your threshold power, and for intensities that are near your maximal power. And it works very similarly with the calculation of your fitness signature. FTP alone is a metric that is very useful if you want to know how well can you perform over a long period of time, 40, 50, 60 minutes. But it tells you almost nothing what's going to happen if you are going to go over threshold power. Will you keep up 1 minute? Will you keep up 5 minutes? Well, that depends on what kind of rider you are. So in addition to your threshold power or FTP, XERT monitors two more metrics: high intensity energy or HIE, which is basically amount of work that you can do at intensities over your threshold, and then your maximal power, which is basically the highest amount of power that your legs can produce. But wait, there's actually more. So far I have told you about 3 main indicators, but there are actually 2 more, and those 2 will actually show you how deep actually XERT goes in their analysis. And the first one is focus power, and focus is actually a metric that allows XERT to really personalize your training. It represents a duration that you pick for yourself based on what rider you are or based on what rider you would like to be. As you can see here on my profile page, my focus duration is 5 minutes. That is a value that I have set for myself. Why 5 minutes? Well, because I think that 5-minute power is the most important duration for Zwift racing. But if you are a sprinter, you might choose a shorter focus duration. Or if you are a time trialist, you might actually go for a longer one. And the beauty of XERT is it's going to create you a training plan that is going to focus on improving your power at this set duration. For me, that is improving power at 5 minutes. Not sprint power, not FTP, my power for 5 minutes. And the last number here is your lower threshold power. XERT actually acknowledges that FTP is your theoretical wattage that you can hold for prolonged period of time without speedy lactate buildup, but only in one case, when you are really rested. If your true FTP is 250 watts, but you would test yourself after 3 hours of heavy riding, you would never be able to test to that number. Your FTP would be much lower. And that is basically what XERT says with lower threshold power. It says it is basically your FTP when your stamina is depleted. In other words, when you are really tired. So as you can see, XERT knows really well what kind of rider you are or how much have you been training recently. But you might be wondering, how? How is it possible that you don't need to do FTP test anymore? And that is because XERT is constantly refining your power profile with something they call breakthroughs. I will get into how they work a little later, but generally speaking, at every single point in time, XERT is making a prediction of what you are capable of. And if you surpass that prediction and that expectation with either workout, race, or a test, you achieve what they call breakthrough. Do you remember how I said that XERT models your sprint ability, your anaerobic ability, and your aerobic ability? Well, if you surpass either of those three, you achieve a bronze breakthrough. If you surpass two, you achieve a silver breakthrough, and if you beat all three, you achieve a gold breakthrough, and that is like the ultimate refinement of your power profile. But how XERT uses this information? Let's actually move to the part on how does training with XERT really work. What I was talking about up until this point was happening in the background. The only thing you needed to do was set up a synchronization of data from one of the supported platforms. But now when you want to start training, you need to actually give XERT some information. Mainly how you want to train, what are your goals, when are your goals, and what is your availability. Here you can see that you can choose your training approach from one of the two options. The one on the left is called Forecast AI, and the main use case of this option is when you have some goal in mind. For example, you are training for a race in June next year, or you want to be as fit as possible before the Zwift games in March. That's when you would use this option. On the right, you have what they call the XERT Adaptive Training Advisor, or XATA, which is mainly used if you don't have a specific goal in mind and you just want to improve. The main difference here is the Forecast AI will create you a training program that is going to optimize your fitness at a specific date for a specific goal. It is still adaptive. If you miss a block of training, it's going to recalculate, but it will still beeline towards that goal. On the other hand, XATA will give you day-by-day guidance with the purpose of recommending you the best workout on that very day. I'm not going to go into too much detail about each of those options available because that's really beyond the scope of this video, but in general, if you want to train for a specific target in the future, choose Forecast AI, and if you just want to improve on a daily basis, choose XATA. So now let's actually set up a training plan for myself. My ultimate goal this season are the Zwift games, which start early in the March, so I want to be as fit as possible by the end of February. So the program I will actually select is the goal event under the Forecast AI. And I'm going to do create new training plan. I actually have training plan already set up, so I will create a new one for the purposes of this video. My end date is going to be 28th of February 2025, which is corresponding roughly to the start of Zwift games. My focus is going to be 5-minute power, which they call breakaway specialist. I think that is the most important skill for Zwift, 5-minute power, so that is what I'm going to set. I'm actually going to skip over the power increase for now, but we will return to that very soon. I will set my maximal weekly hours to 11 hours, which is, as of now, about the maximum I would want to train. I might increase that in the future, but for now let's set 11 hours. Now let's take a look at the specificity option here. You can actually select from 3 options: polar, mixed, and pure. Let's not go into details about what that means, but basically the polar option is going to increase more your training load and increase more your FTP and sprint power, while the pure option is going to increase more of your anaerobic power and increase your high intensity energy. As you can see at the top in the achievability section, my plan in its current settings is only achievable at the polar setting. If I change it to mixed or pure, it says you will likely not reach your target fitness signature. So I'm going to select polar, as that is probably the best course of action for me. For you, it might be different. Now let's go back to the power increase slider, and what you basically do with this one is you set how much your focus power is going to improve by the specified date if you complete the training as prescribed. And you might be wondering, well, what happens if I crank it right to the right? I want it to improve as much as possible. Well, obviously at some point the training becomes not feasible. So you can see as I crank it to the right, the achievability section at the top says you will likely not reach your training fitness signature. So I will reduce it back to when the achievability becomes green, and it becomes green at 17 watts, and it says you will likely reach your training fitness signature. But if I set it for the top end, for the 17 watts, there is not going to be basically any room for error. So I would need to really complete basically every workout that is prescribed to me in order to be able to achieve that. And that's likely not going to happen. So I'm going to dial it a little bit more to give myself some room for error. And let's say I'm going to dial it down 5 watts back to 12. Okay, that looks really good. And here on the right, you can actually see how much does XERT predicts my improvement by the specified date. So right here on the top, it expects my 5-minute power to go up from 336 watts to 348 watts, which is the 12 watts I have set here. And with that, it expects my threshold power to go up by 6 watts, my high intensity energy by 2.1 kilojoules, and my peak sprint power by 100 watts. It also expects my training load go up from 55 to 67 to achieve that, and majority of that increase is going to be in the low part of the training load. So basically I will do a lot of easy riding, and the high and peak intensity loads are going to be just sprinkled in. So that is the general settings of the training plan. But I'm going to set one more thing, and that is my weekly availability, and you do that in this section right here. And what you do here is you select how much time do you have for training during each day of the week. So you can see I have set that during each workday I have 1 hour and 30 minutes, which is about the maximum I would like to do during a workday. For Saturday, I set 2 hours, and for Sunday, I have set 3 hours. It doesn't mean that you are going to have 1 hour and 30-minute workout during each workday and 2-hour workout on Saturday and 3-hour workout on Sunday. Those are just maximums that XERT is going to plan for those days. And there is one more section that says general settings, but it is a little more advanced, so I'm going to just leave all the settings in this section as default and run forecast AI. You can see here it is crunching the numbers. It says awesome, an optimal training plan has been successfully forecasted, and you can see the updated indicators and expectations for my end date here. They are similar to the preliminary expectations on the previous screen, but this is really calculated based on the training plan already. So at this point, everything looks good. I have progressive increase of training load, as you can see by this zigzaggy black line. So I'm going to save training plan. It says this will overwrite your existing program. That's fine. I will continue. And it says training forecast complete. And I got transferred to the program overview page that basically shows my progression here on the right, shows my current indicators and my goal indicators for the end date. Now, if we go to the Planner tab, you can see that your calendar has been populated. These are not your workouts yet. These are merely guidelines about how much stress should you acquire during each day and what should be its structure. That is being represented by the colored line on the left. The blue line stands for low stress, the yellow line stands for high stress, and the red line stands for peak stress. So now that we have our training plan ready, let's actually see how we can convert these guidelines into real workouts. There are actually 3 ways in which you can complete the prescribed training load, and the first one is using XERT workout library. When you hover over the card with your prescribed training load, 2 buttons appear, and the one on the left says choose training. If you click on that, a window appears, and on the left you have the daily prescription, and on the right you've got the selection of the workouts that are most corresponding to your prescribed training load. Just pick one of them and click select and save. When you do that, that workout is actually applied to your calendar. I will show you how to do the workouts a little later, but for the time being, let's delete it and I will show you the other 2 methods. And for the second method, you need to go for the second button on the card, one that says Autogen. And when you click that, XERT is actually going to read your daily prescription, its structure, and generate you a workout using AI that's going to almost exactly fulfill that prescription. When you have a workout scheduled in your calendar, what you can do is go to Training tab and you will have that workout right at the top. You can download the workout as a file from there, but we are actually going to focus on this paper plane icon that says Send to. And if you click that, you can set that to your cycling computer that you have connected to your account, but we are mainly going to focus on the new option that says Send to Zwift. That's actually a super new integration. Previously, if you wanted to send your workout to Zwift, you needed to download it, save it to a specific file on your hard drive, and then open it on Zwift. But as of about 2 weeks ago, you can now send it to Zwift directly. The only thing that you need to do is connect your XERT account with your Zwift account. So when you want to do that, you will just click Send to Zwift and your workout will wait for you on your Zwift home screen. So those were 2 ways to complete the daily prescription. But you might recall I promised you 3. And the third option is, in my opinion, the most fun way to complete a workout I have ever experienced. There is one problem with it. It's only for Garmin users, and it's called XSS Buckets. If you have a Garmin device, you can go to your Connect IQ store and download data field that is called XSS Buckets. And when you connect it to your Garmin computer, it will synchronize before each ride, and it will give you exactly that. 3 buckets that represent your low stress, your high stress, and your peak stress. And based on how you ride, it will actually start filling them up. And when you have that, you can complete your daily training load without being constrained to any intervals. You can do it inside on Zwift or outside, just riding around the river or doing climbs or whatever you want. When you're riding on the flat sections, you will probably fill up your blue bucket, which represents your low stress, and then you can really hammer it on the climbs to complete your higher buckets. Guys, I promise, once you try it, you will be hooked and you won't want to do training in any other way, whether you are training outside or you are doing the workouts on Zwift. So now you know how to set up a training plan and how to execute it. But we all know that life gets in the way, and it would be a miracle if you could fulfill the training plan to the T. That is actually a problem with conventional training plans. What happens when you get sick? Do you postpone the workouts? Do you skip them? Do you do them back to back at a later date? You have basically no guidance. In XERT, none of this matters. Let's pretend I will go for a trip and I won't be able to ride. Do you see that clock under each card? Well, if you click that, you can set your availability for the day. You can straight up set you won't be available, or you can set the time at which you will be available. By the way, I don't use this option very much. But then you can also set the duration of the workout that you can complete. That's very practical if XERT is giving you 2-hour workout, but you have only half an hour available. But for the time being, let's actually pretend I'm going to leave for the remainder of the week. I'm going to set myself as unavailable. And what you can see at the top is that the Adapt Training button got a red dot. And the red dot basically means that something in the reality has changed and the training plans need to be recalculated. For me, it happened because I set myself unavailable for the remainder of the week. So what I'm going to do is click on that button called Adapt Training with the red dot, and the plan is going to be recalculated around my restriction. It really is that simple. Up until this point, XERT was just guiding you through your improvement or preparing you for your big race day. But it is not the only thing it can do. It can also guide you through racing, and it is almost like having a headset with DS on the other side. It can guide you through racing in many different ways, but let's just focus on the main one in this video. But before we do that, I need to introduce one more metric, and that is MPA, or Maximal Power Available. It is also calculated in real time, and what that basically is your maximal sprint power that you have available at every second during the race. When you are really rested at the start of your race, your MPA is going to be actually the same number as your maximal sprint power we were talking about earlier. But as you start fatiguing and as you start pedaling hard, your MPA will start dropping. The harder you will pedal, the faster it will drop. And you will see it dropping in real time on your bike computer, so you can really dial in your race effort. For example, let's imagine you are doing a Zwift race and you are trying to stick with the front group. And you can see your MPA dropping like crazy. At this point, you have 3 options how to handle that situation. Firstly, you can try to find a better position in the group so you can draft more and reduce your effort. Secondly, you might tell yourself that you are probably not going to be able to keep up with the group and slow down. And thirdly, you can make a bet that you will try to keep up with the group anyway, with the hopes that it will slow down. Ultimately, that decision is up to you, but if the group doesn't slow down, you are going to get dropped and you will see that on the bike computer. But what if you feel particularly good and you are able to continue even though your MPA is telling you should be dead by that point? Well, do you remember how I was talking about breakthroughs and the improvement of your core metrics? Well, this is exactly how you achieve them. Every single time you are able to hold power exceeding your MPA for a few seconds, you will earn a breakthrough. And the better your training is, the more frequent the breakthroughs are going to be.